I paid for everything. The venue, the flowers, the band, the 300 a plate dinner. Every single dime came out of my pocket. And yet, there I stood, at my own wedding reception, watching my father-in-law raise a champagne glass and humiliate me in front of 200 guests. He smiled as he said, "Let's all thank Nathan for funding this beautiful night. I guess someone had to pay for Vanessa's expensive taste." The room erupted in laughter, not polite chuckles, real, gut-punching, cruel laughter from Vanessa's entire family. Even she laughed, like it was just a harmless joke. But it wasn't a joke. It was the final nail in a coffin they'd been building for months. I didn't yell. I didn't storm out. I walked to the stage, calm as ever, and took the mic. Then I reached into my jacket and pulled out a USB drive. Before we continue celebrating, I said, "There's something I think you all should see. I'm Nathan Reynolds, cybersecurity specialist, and this is how I exposed an entire family's betrayal at the very party they expected me to fund and forget. If you've ever been used, betrayed, or laughed at by people you thought loved you, this story is yours. Stay with me, because revenge doesn't always come with fireworks. Sometimes it comes with a flash drive. I wasn't born into wealth. My dad was a firefighter, my mom a school nurse. We lived modestly in a 2-bedroom home in North Miami. What we lacked in luxury, we made up for in love and grit. From a young age, I learned that if I wanted something, I had to work for it. I got my first computer at 13, secondhand, missing 2 keys, and loud as a jet engine. But that machine changed my life. I tore it apart, rebuilt it, coded basic programs for fun, and by the time I was 17, I was freelancing cybersecurity gigs for local businesses. I put myself through college with scholarships and side jobs. No handouts, no family connections, just late nights and raw determination. By 30, I was a senior cybersecurity analyst at a Miami firm, making 6 figures and living in a clean, quiet condo overlooking the bay. That's where I met Vanessa. She was different from anyone I'd dated before. Stunning, confident, walked like the world bent for her, and in many ways it did. Her last name, Morgan, carried weight in South Florida. Her father was a prominent real estate developer. Her mother hosted charity galas, the kind of people whose homes had names and wine cellars larger than my apartment. I'll admit, I was intimidated at first, but Vanessa didn't care about any of that. At least that's what she told me. She said she loved how grounded I was, how I made her feel safe, how I didn't care about status games or social climbing. For a while, it felt real. It felt like love. We dated for 3 years. During that time, I got glimpses of the truth, ugly, snide comments from her mother about blue-collar values, awkward silences at family dinners, Gerald refusing to shake my hand at their holiday party. But Vanessa always smoothed things over. "They're just stuck in their ways," she'd say. "Give them time." So I gave them time. When I proposed, I thought things might finally change. Maybe once I became part of the family, they'd see me differently. Maybe they'd finally respect me. But then came the wedding planning. Vanessa wanted a grand event. Nothing outrageous, but definitely upscale. A destination ceremony at an oceanfront resort in Palm Beach, a designer dress, a live jazz band flown in from New Orleans. It was a lot. I offered to keep things simple, intimate. "What matters most is us," I said. She smiled, kissed my cheek, and said, "I know, but this is our one big day. We should celebrate it in style." I agreed. I wanted her to be happy. I assumed her family would help with the expenses. After all, Gerald once spent $50,000 on a birthday party for his bulldog. But when we sat down to discuss finances, he scoffed. "This was your idea," he said. "If you want to play Prince Charming, be ready to pay the royal bill." Vanessa said nothing, just stared at her phone like none of it was surprising. I should have seen it then. The signs were all there. But love has a way of blinding logic. I thought maybe this was just pride. Maybe Gerald wanted to test me, see if I could handle providing for his daughter. I told myself, pay for it now, win their respect later. So I emptied my savings, canceled a trip to Iceland I had planned for years, cashed in a small investment account I'd built slowly over time. Every dollar I had went into making that wedding magical. For her, for us. But somewhere along the way, Vanessa changed. She became colder, shorter in conversations, dismissive when I voiced opinions about music or decorations. "That's more my mom's lane," she'd say. Or worse, "You wouldn't understand. It's a Morgan thing." The wedding wasn't ours anymore. It was hers and her family's. I was footing the bill, but felt like an outsider, just another contractor on the payroll. Still, I held on, because love is about compromise, right? That's what I thought, until the night of the rehearsal dinner. That's when I saw her step outside and whisper into her phone with a smile I hadn't seen in months. That's when I started digging. That night, while Vanessa slept next to me in our hotel suite, I opened my laptop. As a cybersecurity specialist, I don't go snooping through people's devices for fun. But something about that phone call at the rehearsal dinner, it didn't sit right. The way she giggled, the way she leaned against the wall like a teenager with a secret. That wasn't how someone looked at their soon-to-be husband. That was how someone looked at someone they were still in love with. I'd seen that smile before, but it hadn't been mine in months. Vanessa always claimed she had nothing to hide. So I took her at her word and her passcode. It took me 2 minutes to clone her phone onto my secure work drive. I didn't even need to guess the password. It was her birth year. Classic. I didn't expect what I found. Hundreds of deleted messages, painstakingly removed from her visible chats, but not gone from the system. Vanessa wasn't just texting someone. She was emotionally attached, flirty, intimate. The name? Jay? At first I assumed it was a friend, a cousin, a college buddy, but the deeper I dug, the uglier it got. Jay was James, the same James she had dated before me. The one she swore was ancient history, the one she called toxic and a lesson learned. Apparently, he wasn't a lesson. He was a lover, still. They had been talking for months, since before we even picked a wedding date. And they weren't just talking. There were screenshots of hotel bookings, photos, jokes about me, about how he's such a good little wallet. One message from Vanessa read, "Once the honeymoon's done, I'll find an excuse to move back home for a bit. We'll figure it out. He's just a stepping stone." A stepping stone. That's what I was to her. A bridge between her family's financial mess and a stable future. But it didn't stop there. Buried in her cloud storage were forwarded emails between Gerald, my would-be father-in-law, and James. Long, detailed threads. Gerald was helping coordinate their meetups. He had paid for hotel rooms. He even sent James a spreadsheet with my income estimates and banking activity based on public records. It was a full operation. Gerald's company had apparently taken a huge financial hit in recent years. Lawsuits, declining assets, and internal mismanagement. But you'd never know it from the outside. They kept up the facade, just long enough to marry Vanessa into stability. Into me. I was the lifeboat, a financially sound, tech-savvy, self-made man with no criminal record and no family debts. They figured I was the perfect mark. They weren't even discreet about it. In one email, Gerald wrote to James, "Just a year or two. Let her play wife. Once the dust settles, she'll come back to you. With money. You'll both be set." I sat in silence for over an hour, reading through every cruel, calculated word. Then I got up, walked to the window and stared out at the waves crashing against the shore. I could have confronted her then, could have screamed, accused, packed up and left. But something in me said, don't. Not yet. If I walked away now, they'd spin it. Blame me, say I had cold feet, or that I couldn't handle the pressure. They'd get sympathy. They'd control the narrative. No, I wouldn't let that happen. So I copied every message, every photo, every email to a private folder. I compiled them into a presentation, timelined, color-coded, with names and dates. I even added music to the slides, dramatic, tasteful. I transferred it all onto a small USB drive, and I slid that drive into the inner pocket of my wedding suit. Not to ruin the wedding, not to destroy Vanessa's life, but to reclaim mine. The wedding day arrived under a perfect sky, blue, cloudless, and cruel. Palm trees swayed gently outside the oceanfront resort I had paid for in full, right down to the last satin napkin. I watched guests shuffle in, all dressed in designer suits and glittering dresses, sipping champagne like they belonged to a world I had only bought my way into for one afternoon. My best man Ryan clapped me on the back and asked if I was ready. More than ever, I said, and I meant it, but not in the way he thought. Inside, everything gleamed. Gold-trimmed chairs, candlelit chandeliers, custom floral arrangements from some overpriced boutique in West Palm. Vanessa got everything she asked for. She looked stunning walking down the aisle. Perfect hair, perfect smile, perfect lie. I stood there watching her approach me, veil floating, eyes locked on mine like nothing was wrong. I wondered if she felt even a flicker of guilt. If, behind that smile, she knew what was coming. But she didn't. She was too busy playing the part of the beloved bride, the doting daughter, the Morgan legacy. We exchanged vows. She even got misty-eyed when I slipped the ring on her finger. It was a $9,000 ring. She never knew I'd sold my motorcycle to afford it. The reception kicked off with roaring applause. The band played soft jazz as servers moved between tables with trays of filet mignon and lobster risotto. Then came the speeches. Vanessa's maid of honor gushed about their friendship since prep school. Vanessa's mother offered a sweet, rehearsed toast. And then Gerald stood up. He walked to the stage with that smug country club confidence he always wore, lifted his glass, looked directly at me. At first, when he began, I wasn't sure about Nathan. He's not from our world, doesn't come from money or name or legacy. I froze. But I have to give the man credit, he said, drawing out each word. When our daughter said she wanted a dream wedding, Nathan made it happen. Laughter rumbled through the crowd. And not just the wedding, he added, chuckling. From what I hear, he's also paying for the honeymoon. And maybe the mortgage next, huh? More laughter. Vanessa's brother slapped the table, wheezing. Vanessa just smiled. Smiled and looked down into her champagne glass like this was all so charming. I felt the blood drain from my face. That was the moment, the exact second when I realized there was no saving this, no love, no partnership, no marriage. Just a circus I had funded, starring me as the fool. I could feel eyes on me, some awkward, some pitying, but none intervening. I stood up slowly, buttoned my jacket, walked toward the stage with a calmness that surprised even me. I took the mic from Gerald's hand. Thank you, I said. Really, thank you, Gerald, for your kind words. A few polite chuckles. Vanessa looked confused. Gerald stepped aside, smug. I reached into my jacket pocket and pulled out the small black USB drive. But before we continue celebrating, I said, holding it up between two fingers, I'd like to share something with all of you. A gift. From me to the Morgans. I plugged it into the venue's AV system. The room dimmed. The projector screen lit up. Silence. Then the first message appeared. Don't worry, baby. I'll still be yours after the honeymoon. He's just a paycheck. Gasps. More messages followed. Dozens of them scrolling in time succession. Screenshots, hotel bookings, photos, emails from Gerald, bank records. Every piece of evidence carefully laid out beyond dispute. The jazz band stopped playing. Forks clinked to the floor. People stared, mouths open. Vanessa shot up from her seat. Nathan, what are you doing? I turned to her, steady and cold. I'm showing them who you are, who you all are. Gerald tried to rush the stage. Security, hired by me, blocked him with a hand to the chest. I picked up the mic again. My voice didn't shake. I'm a cybersecurity expert. You thought I wouldn't find your passwords? You thought you could fool me forever? Vanessa cried. Gerald shouted. Her mother fainted. I adjusted my cufflinks. And now, if you'll excuse me, I have a honeymoon to cancel. I walked off that stage and through the stunned silence of 200 people, heels clacking, eyes wide, breath held. At the door, I turned back once. Enjoy the food, Umers, I said. After all, I paid for it. The moment I stepped outside the reception hall, a warm coastal breeze hit my face, and with it, a calm I hadn't felt in months. I didn't run. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just walked, slowly and purposefully, to the valet stand where my car waited, engine already humming. I tipped the valet generously, slipped behind the wheel, and drove off without a single glance back. Behind me, chaos was still unfolding. Guests stunned into silence. Gerald raging at staff. Vanessa trying to explain the unexplainable. But I was done explaining. I had done enough of that over the past year. This wasn't rage. This wasn't revenge for revenge's sake. It was justice. And I wasn't finished. The next morning, while the Morgans scrambled to manage the fallout, I filed for an annulment. Not a divorce, an annulment. There would be no alimony, no splitting assets, no drawn-out negotiations. Legally, it would be as if the marriage never happened. Clean, swift, final. I also contacted every vendor who worked on the wedding, photographers, florists, caterers. Since all contracts had been in my name, I requested that every file, every photo, every video be sent to my private encrypted email. I made sure to delete any images Vanessa's family might try to use to save face later. A few days later, I booked a short trip to Costa Rica, not for leisure, but for clarity. I stayed in a quiet beachside town, disconnected from the noise, and mapped out my next steps. I didn't want revenge fueled by emotion. I wanted precision, strategy, results. By the time I came back to Miami, I had a plan. Step 1, exposure. I gathered all the data I had collected, texts, call logs, emails, financial documents, and organized them into a secure dossier. Then I opened a secure tip line to the IRS. See, one of the things Gerald didn't account for when mocking me publicly was the depth of my access and how much I already knew about his business. Those forwarded emails Vanessa had saved, they included Gerald's personal tax filings, investment breakdowns, even confidential documents he had carelessly sent from his company email. The man was knee-deep in tax fraud, shell companies, and unpaid payroll taxes. I packaged everything anonymously and submitted it through the appropriate whistleblower channels. I knew it would take time, but it was only a matter of when, not if, Gerald's empire would crumble. Step 2, restart. I left the firm I'd been working for and launched my own cybersecurity consultancy. At first, it was just me in a tiny home office with 2 monitors and a coffee pot. But word spread fast in the Miami tech community, especially after the wedding story leaked through a few mutual contacts. Turns out, people love hiring someone who stood up to a corrupt family of millionaires and burned them without blinking. Within 4 months, I landed a contract with a financial firm in Tampa. 3 months after that, I signed with a private defense contractor needing infrastructure security. The payday? Enough to put down a full cash offer on a downtown condo and reinvest into scaling the business. I built a team, hired smart, loyal people, and for the first time in my life, I felt respected. Not because of my last name, but because of what I created. Meanwhile, the Morgans? Imploding. Word got around. Quiet murmurs in Palm Beach society turned into headlines when federal agents raided Morgan properties. Assets frozen. Partners bailed. Gerald resigned from the board. And though no one could prove where the information came from, the investigation documents included almost verbatim files from that little USB drive I had once pulled from my pocket on wedding night. I never gloated, never posted about it, never called Vanessa. But one day, about 6 months after everything had collapsed, I received an email. No subject line, just 2 sentences. "I'm sorry, I should have chosen you for you. I hope you're okay." It was from Vanessa. I read it once, then again. Then I archived it. No response. Not out of anger, not out of spite, but because I had nothing left to say. She had chosen her family's image, their money, their lies. I chose myself. And this time, I didn't need their approval. You'd think that exposing a family at their own daughter's wedding would be the end of the story, but it wasn't. Not even close. In the weeks that followed, I kept my distance from the drama. But drama has a way of finding you, even when you stay silent. First came the phone calls, blocked numbers, random voicemails from people with polished voices, trying to sound composed while asking for a private discussion. I never responded. Then came the lawyers representing Morgan Properties, sending veiled threats about potential defamation and unauthorized access to private information. Cute. But here's the thing about cybersecurity experts. We keep receipts. I had clear documentation of every message, every digital trail, every file they themselves had sent, often to unsecured accounts. Nothing was hacked. Nothing was fabricated. It was all their own words. My silence was my protection. I never addressed the incident publicly. No interviews, no Reddit posts, no tell-all social media rants. But I didn't need to. Palm Beach society did the talking for me. Within 2 months, word of what happened spread through high-end circles like wildfire. It started with whispers at country clubs, then wine nights between socialites, until it finally spilled into public view. A finance columnist published an expose on the sudden collapse of Gerald Morgan's empire. Notably, the piece referenced anonymous documents submitted to the IRS revealing a web of tax evasion and offshore accounts. Even without naming me, the implication was clear to those who knew the story. The fallout was brutal. Gerald was indicted for multiple counts of tax fraud and obstruction. His properties were seized under federal forfeiture. Investors pulled out in droves. Several executives resigned. Within months, Morgan Properties was a ghost. Its offices padlocked, website taken down, phone numbers disconnected. The same people who once laughed at me during that wedding toast now pretended they'd always supported me. They sent messages like, "You were always too good for them," or "Gerald had it coming." But I wasn't interested in validation. Not anymore. Vanessa, meanwhile, faded from the spotlight. She moved back in with her mother temporarily, then relocated to Orlando under a different last name. Mutual friends said she was trying to rebuild. One even hinted that she had tried reconnecting with James, only to be ghosted. Poetic. And still, I didn't celebrate. Not out loud. Because while everyone else was scrambling to salvage their reputations, I had already moved on. My business was thriving. I hired 3 new staff members, opened a second office in Fort Lauderdale, and landed a federal cybersecurity contract. The same week Gerald was arraigned, I stood in a conference room in D.C. presenting a proposal to government officials, people who respected me for my expertise, not my family ties. But perhaps the most meaningful moment came a few months later. I was attending a local tech conference when an older gentleman approached me after my panel talk. "You're Nathan, right?" he said, extending a hand. "I am," I replied, cautious. He smiled. "My niece was at that wedding." My stomach tensed for a second, but he laughed gently. "Relax. She said it was the most unforgettable event she's ever attended, and not for the decor." He paused, then added, "You didn't just walk away, son. You walked through it. That takes something rare." That moment hit harder than I expected. Not because it flattered me, but because it reminded me of everything I'd walked through just to get to where I was. The lies, the humiliation, the betrayal. And yet I hadn't crumbled. I hadn't played the victim. I had rebuilt, stronger, smarter, and more dangerous in the best way. Not long after that, I cleared out the last remnants of the past. I deleted the USB drive files, removed the encrypted backups, blocked every number tied to the Morgans. I even donated Vanessa's wedding ring, still pristine in its velvet box, to a charity auction for survivors of domestic financial abuse. Somewhere in that act, I found peace. I hadn't just exposed them. I had outgrown them. Because real revenge doesn't scream. It doesn't rage or burn down buildings. It walks away without looking back. It's been over a year now. Sometimes I still wake up and wonder if it really happened. If I really stood in front of 200 people and calmly dismantled a legacy built on lies, using nothing but truth and a flash drive. But it did happen. And no, I don't regret a second of it. The man I am today is not the man who once begged for approval at someone else's dinner table. I don't shrink to fit into places I don't belong anymore. I don't apologize for being self-made. I don't chase love that makes me prove I deserve it. These days, I live quietly in a modern apartment overlooking Biscayne Bay. My company is growing, slowly and sustainably. I mentor young professionals who come from backgrounds like mine, people with fire in their hearts but doubt in their eyes. I tell them the truth. Success doesn't come from revenge. It comes from rising after they thought you wouldn't. Sometimes people ask me if I ever got closure. I tell them this. Closure isn't a conversation. It's not an apology. It's not a second chance. Closure is when you realize their betrayal is no longer your story, It's just your beginning. And the best part? You don't need to prove anything to anyone once you finally believe in yourself. What did you think of this story? If you were in Nathan's shoes, how would you have handled it? Let me know where you're watching from in the comments. And if you think Nathan made the right move, vote number 10. If you think he went too far, vote number 2. Don't forget to subscribe to Revenge with Chris so you never miss a powerful new karma story every single day.